Good afternoon, guys. Today our guest is Norm O'Reilly from University of Ohio. It's a first guest from the different continent. And good afternoon, Mr. O'Reilly. Today we start from one interesting thing that in United States and in Canada, I think also you have this um, special approach to study. You have a student athlete, and if I'm not mistaken, you also were a student athlete. Could you explain like what does it mean and describe how's everyday life of student athlete happens in United States and Canada?
Yeah, great question. We're very lucky in North America, and particularly in the United States, where high performance sport is part of the university experience. So the teams at the big universities of the Division One in the U.S. and the top Canadian schools will have teams and clubs where people buy tickets. A lot of the athletes go on to be professional. They go on to be Olympians and represent their country. The athletes, in fact, come from all over the world to participate in the NCAA, which is in the United States. And there's about 500 schools, give or take, that are at the Division One level. So these would be full-time paid coaches. They got full support in terms of medical, et cetera. So then to your question, but the athlete that's in there, typically they're on a scholarship. So in return for playing for the university at this high level, they get their tuition covered, which is significant in the United States. They get coaching, they get food, they get a dorm room, they get their books covered, they get all, basically they call it a full ride, the full expenses covered. In return, they have to pass their courses, do well in school, which is hard, and compete and do everything that the coach says. So the life of a student athlete, and I was one as well, is one of balance, because you're trying to be a student, so you're spending 30, 40 hours a week as a student, and you're trying to be a high performance athlete, spending 20, 30 hours a week as an athlete. And there are rules to be both, but really balancing that means a lot of the other stuff that students like to do, the social life, the hanging out, that stuff all disappears because you're really, really busy. But it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a great sport development environment.
But could you describe one day, like from the morning till the night, how it happens?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of my life. So I was a swimmer and a Nordic skier, so I did the two different sports at different universities. So when I was a swimmer, typically you would wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You would eat, right? Head into school, and practice would start. You'd be ready. You'd swim from 6 to 8. Then you'd grab some breakfast, and you go to class, and you would work through the day. I was in business school. You go through class. You'd have group meetings, this kind of stuff. In the evening, it's either another swim or a weight workout. So let's say from 5:30 to 7:30, you're doing that. Then you go eat, go home, do some work, because you have studying to do, and you go to bed at midnight or 1. Repeat. And that would be a typical day. We were swimming anywhere from 5 to 9 times a week, depending on the week, and you'd be doing strength training, workout, dry land training, 3 to 5 times a week. So you're training, close to 20, 25 hours a week, plus you're doing your school. So the weekends were a lot of catching up. And then usually you'd pick one night a week where you'd do something fun, like if with a girlfriend or go out or whatever, but nowhere near as much as your roommates and other students are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it means that you sleep almost 3 or 4 hours every day.
Yeah. That's kind of where I got in probably the habit of not sleeping too much. You don't sleep too much. You grab a nap if you could, which is sometimes hard, but if you lived on campus, that was okay. And then obviously on the weekend, there's some catching up on sleep. So what we typically had was Friday night practices, and then Saturday we'd practice at noon, so you could sleep in on the weekend days. But then once competition season starts, every weekend, you're traveling to some competition. So it's a busy life, but that's the life of the student athlete, is balance and focus, and then the opportunity, which is truly special, to be able to get a degree in the field you want to have a career in, assuming you're not going to go pro, and to still be a high performance athlete.
But how many students are able to overcome this challenge? Because it's really difficult, and I think not everybody is able to overcome this. And could you tell also, do you have any possibility to be a professional after your education, and why you choose the academic way?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we'll focus on the U.S. because Canada, it's not as developed. So in the U.S., there's about 70,000 Division One student athletes. So of those, a small percentage, I think they talk about 1%. So if we said, if 700 have a chance to become an Olympian or professional athlete. So that's typically in football, in basketball, men's and women's basketball, kind of with the WNBA. The odd, some hockey players go to the NHL from the NCAA. Athletics, it's the number one thing for athletics to go on to the Olympics or the professional circuit as a runner. Swimmers, a huge number of swimmers in the NCAA go on to the Olympic Games. A lot of the team sports, they go on in soccer, field hockey, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of chance, but it's very rare. Most athletes are not. So the first part of your question, it's very common for a student athlete to drop off because each year new students come in, the coach is recruiting, and if you don't make the team, you lose your scholarship, and then you go back down to being a regular student. So in fact, because the scholarships, except for the very, very elite, the scholarships are so important to athletes, and a lot of these athletes couldn't have afforded otherwise financially to go to a big school like that, that they do everything they can to keep them. So it's very competitive. The main reason that athletes drop off is actually their academic performance. Is the university will say, if you don't maintain this average, and the NCAA has rules, then you will be forced off the team because you're not keeping up your academic standards. So the main reason they drop off is actually academics, not athletics.
Okay, it's clear with that. So we are now in Russia, and Russia it's really different from this North American student sport culture. And first question I want to ask about in that context, like what is really the difference between Canada and US? Because for us, yeah, we understand there is some difference, but probably you can shortly say what's like what is the core of this difference, and could you somehow compare also student sports in Europe and in North America?
Yeah, so first, the best way to compare it is, so in the United States, is by far the most developed and the most sophisticated university sports system in the world by a long shot. I mean, the athletes that come, they aren't just Americans. They're from all over the world. Like the Russian athletes that are really good try to get a scholarship. And a lot of Europeans, Canadians. So if you're a really good Canadian athlete in any of those sports and have potential for pro or Olympics, almost everyone is going to the United States. Because not only to get the scholarship, the coaching is world class. You have a coach that's making a big salary versus a part-time coach. So that'd be the big difference. But that's the Division One. The U.S. also has a Division II where they don't give out as many scholarships, and then a Division III, which is very relaxed. A lot of the Canadian schools would be like a Division II. So you can get a scholarship. You're getting good coaching. You're representing your school. It's really good. But you're not likely to be on the path to pro or Olympics. And you're not on television. You're not a big star on campus. You might be known, whereas in the U.S. you're kind of a big deal. And then Division III would be, it's just part of your experience. So it's almost like a club. You may be representing a university, but it's a club level. That's really what a lot of Canada, and I would assume that's what it could be like. I don't know how developed the systems are in Russia, but that would be similar to what you see around the world, where you decide you want to be on the football team when you're here at university. You make the team, you play, but academics is clearly first, and then this would be something you choose to do. Whereas for those student athletes at Division I, academics and athletics are on par with each other, and you're really focused on both. That would be the biggest difference.
And if we come back to comparison with Canada and US?
So Canada would be like the Division II sports. So some scholarships, but not nearly as developed. There's a few schools in Canada that have joined the NCAA. So their student athletes compete in the U.S. leagues at the Division II level. So there's some with aspirations of being like that. But there's also a lot of schools in Canada that are not. They don't pay scholarships. For them, athletics is a much lower priority. It's just something that they're almost club-like sports, so it really depends across the board. But Canada, there's a movement to get stronger. The CIS, which is Canadian Interuniversity Sport, is strengthening, and they want to be like that. And then they open up. Scholarships weren't allowed till about 15 years ago. They're now allowed. Sponsors are coming in, so it's starting to grow. But the United States is a long way ahead. Yeah.